Spider-Man Homecoming, directed by John Watts. It's the second reboot in the Spider-Man franchise and also the 16th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. When it comes to comic books and superheroes, Spider-Man is not actually my favourite. I've never really been a massive hardcore fan of this character like a lot of people seem to be. I'm just one of those very few people I think that he's okay. Now, I really liked Sam Raimi's previous two movies. You know, his take on the web slinger back in 2002 with Spider-Man and his amazing sequel, Spider-Man 2. I really dug those movies. And as a result of those movies, the character sort of grew on me. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm warming up to the character now. So, we've got Homecoming. Now, this movie fits in perfectly within the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This looks and feels like a Marvel film, and it really does fit in perfectly within this universe that they've created. Okay, let's talk about the new Spider-Man, is it? Played by Tom Holland. I thought he made a great Spider-Man. And he also made a great, or the perfect even, Peter Parker. I thought he did a really good job in this movie at capturing this character. And even under the mask, he sounded great. I mean, Tom Holland is Spider-Man. I thought he was brilliant in this role, and it was perfect casting. I honestly think that he captured this character better than the previous two actors that have portrayed Spider-Man. Like, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man. I dug his performance. I also dug Andrew Garfield's performance as Spider-Man. I did actually really like him in the role. But Tom Holland, for me, he's just spot on. He perfectly captured this role of Spider-Man. And this is a Spider-Man in this film that is very accident prone. He makes a lot of mistakes. He goes in guns blazing, and as a result ends up making mistakes. And he's got to learn from those mistakes. You know, he ends up falling down a lot, so he's got to learn to pick himself up. And I really liked that. It was almost as if, you know, the Spider-Man that we see in this film, Homecoming, he's not quite yet Spider-Man, but he's on his way to becoming the hero that we all know. Now let's get on to one of my favourite aspects, or one of my favourite things that I can take away from this film for me personally, and that is Michael Keaton as the Vulture. Wow. I really dug Michael Keaton's performance in this film. I thought he was probably the better performer. He was amazing as the Vulture. I thought he was great at portraying this character. And I really dug his performance in this film. I just wish they'd given him more to play with. And I do think he's probably one of the better Marvel villains. So the Vulture's motive is to really just look after his family. He loves his family and he'll do anything for them. But he's forced out of business by the government. So he's then forced to sort of evolve, you could say. And he ends up selling alien weapons on the black market. And it's all in the name of his family. He's doing it so he can look after and protect his family. So as a result, this villain becomes very sympathetic. You can sort of relate to this character and connect to this character on an emotional level. Because, yeah, he's a villain and what he's doing is bad, but there's a meaningful purpose behind it. There is a meaningful motive behind what he's doing. And so, yeah, I think he's quite a sympathetic character and probably one of the most sympathetic characters within the villains, even within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I really wish they'd given him more to play with. And I suppose the character of the Vulture reflects the world, you know, the state of the current economy in the world, and that the fact that this guy, you know, you've lost his job, but he's got to try and survive to support his family, and so it's a sort of, in that way, it's very relatable as well, and I really liked that, and what they, you know, how they sort of infused that within this character. I really dug that. And as much as I would have loved to have seen John Malkovich playing the Vulture, I just really liked that idea and I thought he would have made a great Vulture. I think Michael Keaton is great casting. But I tell you what I'm not a massive fan of when it comes to the casting in this movie, and that is Aunt May. I really didn't like the casting decision made here. She's played by Amaria Tomei. I think that's how you say her name. She's Italian. I think she's Italian, and she plays a younger Aunt May. Now, logically, that makes sense, because why would Peter Parker's aunt, his mother's sister, be so old? It just didn't make sense. So I could see what they were doing from that point. But I just think they could have chosen a better actress, maybe. I just really didn't dig her performance. She is a lot younger and she's attractive, and they play on that quite a bit for humour. And I did sort of really dig the humour side that they sort of attached to this character in this film. I just really didn't like her take on this character. And I think that would probably upset a lot of the fanboys, but I'm not really a massive fanboy to start out with Spider-Man. Like I previously said, Spider-Man is one of my least favourite superheroes. So I'm not a major fanboy. I just didn't like the casting decision when it came to Aunt May. But there were the few of her scenes where I actually chuckled, and there was one moment where I sort of really laughed out loud, but a lot of that was just down to timing. So this film has a lot of fun action, with a lot of energy, as well as a lot of humour thrown into them. For example, there's this one scene where Peter Parker, he's chasing after someone, or chasing after the enemy, and he finds himself in sort of a rural part, you could say, of the city. It's like in a big sort of, it's like in the suburbs, where there's no big tower blocks to swing up into the air. And you've just got this big park, and it's like, it brings up that dilemma of, oh, how am I going to do this now? And I just found that really funny. So it sort of addressed that issue of, but what if I haven't actually got something to swing from? I just found that really funny. And the way that entire scene played out of Spider-Man, running through this park and, running through the sort of suburbs, that was a really fun and exciting action scene. And in a way, I suppose, added a certain amount of realism to the film and the character, which I think sometimes, these films, yeah, it's Spider-Man. It's a boy that was bitten by a radioactive spider, and all of a sudden he can swing from tower block to tower block. But it's always nice to have a little bit of realism so you could just connect to the character more. And I felt like that's what moments like that did, and I appreciated that. But what I will say, for most of the action scenes, the big action moments, like you see one briefly in the trailers, which involves this ferry, the ship, and it's those action scenes that I felt really lacked any tension or weight that I would have liked to have had within those scenes. Those scenes that sort of can, give you goosebumps, and you're like, come on, Spider-Man, you can do it. For example, like that scene in Spider-Man 2 where he tries to stop that train. Now, that was an incredibly tense moment, and it was a great moment, and you could feel the pain and the emotion. And it was because of the way that scene was shot and directed and it was performed. In this, you don't really get a moment like that. Like the ferry scene could have been one of those moments, but it just happened. And there was a lot of those big action set pieces within this film that just sort of fell flat. It was like it was happening, and it just didn't really sort of grab you in the way that it should have. It sort of failed to give, create any sort of attention, and just lacked impact. He's also helped by Iron Man a few times during the film, and at the end of the day, yeah, this is a Spider-Man film, and a lot of people are complaining this could have ended up being an Iron Man film, but it's actually pivotal to the story. And like I said about the Spider-Man, he sort of fails a lot, and he's got to learn from his mistakes. Iron Man being within this story is actually quite pivotal, and I'll be honest, I'm one of those people that when I was watching the trailers, I was like, oh, are they going to rely too much on other characters from the other movies like Iron Man? And there was actually just the right balance, but Iron Man is very much more pivotal to the story than I thought he was going to be. And to me, it looks like they've got something in the pipeline when it comes to Iron Man's relationship, Tony Stark's relationship with Peter Parker. To me, it came across a lot like a father-son relationship. So I'm very sort of excited and interested to see that relationship form, because that's how it came across to me. As if they was, because obviously Spider-Man, he hasn't got his father, he's lost his uncle, and so he needs that sort of father figure. And I really liked that in this. That's how it came across to me. Tony Stark was like his sort of Obi-Wan Kenobi, or he was his father-like figure, and I liked that. And so yeah, by watching the trailers, I was a little bit worried they would rely too much on previous movies and characters. And yeah, you do get Captain America in this, as well as references to the Avengers when it comes to the alien technology and all of that. But it was balanced very, very well. And like I said with Iron Man, I actually really dug his involvement within this story and his connection to the character, and I'm looking forward to seeing where that relationship goes. So for me, this movie overall, I mean, it's a fun and exciting movie. Yeah, okay, some of the big action set pieces sort of fall flat and didn't really have the tension or impact that I'd like them to have. But this movie also seemed to borrow moments from Sam Raimi's movies. Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3 even. I'm not sure if that's just me. Did any of you sort of feel that way as well towards Homecoming? Let me know below. But I felt like they borrowed all the best moments that made those first 3 movies work, put them in a blender, and then did their own sort of take on them. And as a result, this movie felt like a slight retread of what I've seen before. It didn't quite feel original enough, and it felt like I'd seen it before. And that's how I really felt. It was a well-directed movie, don't get me wrong. But there were just moments in this film that sort of reminded me of Sam Raimi's movies. And it was the moments that worked, like the train scene, for example. I do believe the ferry scene was supposed to be one of those moments. And they've taken all those best moments from those films, sort of blended them all up. And then we got Homecoming. So yeah, to me it just felt like a little bit of a retread, like I'd seen it before. Okay, I'm about to talk about a scene, and I'm going to do my damn hardest not for it to come across as a spoiler. I'm going to talk about as much as I can about this particular scene without spoiling anything, okay? I gotta talk about this scene because it's one of my favourite moments in the movie, and it's not even an action scene. So for those that have seen it already, I hope you know which scene I'm referencing. And it involves Michael Keaton's character, the Vulture, and Spider-Man, and another character, and they're in a car, and they are travelling somewhere. Okay, and I hope that doesn't give too much away. But that particular scene, it lasts about 2-3 minutes. And I tell you what, the tension in that scene was incredible. I wish actually the tension that was created within that scene had been used also in the action scenes. But yeah, I loved that scene, and for me the reason why that scene really worked was it was down to Michael Keaton's performance and just the script, the lines. I just loved it. It really sort of like had me at the edge of my seat, and you got a lot of focus on Michael Keaton's face and his expression as well. It was very sort of like when he's looking in the mirror and you've got the light on his face from the traffic lights, and just the way that entire scene was shot and how it played out. I loved it. It was very sort of, I just really dug that scene, and I think Michael Keaton's performance in that scene was brilliant. I think they got the tone just right in this movie. For the character anyway, they got the tone perfect. They really captured the world of Spider-Man and his character. I do prefer darker and grittier. That's just me. That's what I prefer. But for this character, it was spot on. It's a colourful film. It's very fun. It's very energetic. And, if I was a 15-year-old who had just been bitten by a radioactive spider, then I'd also just want to have fun being Spider-Man, which is what this Peter Parker is all about. He just loves being Spider-Man. But then it also explores, he's got to stop and realise that he's got responsibility. That he's got to stop just going in guns all blazing and that, you know, he has got responsibility and he does have to grow up and be a hero. And this film explores that really well, I felt. I do think there needed to be a bit more of a connection between Peter Parker and his love interest in the movie. I didn't feel like there was enough of just enough of a connection really to really care about that relationship. But yeah, overall this was a fun movie full of energy, and I think for me it's probably one of the funniest Marvel films because there were moments where I actually laughed out loud, and I can't actually remember doing that in a Marvel film before. I suppose Ant-Man. I could actually put this on the same level probably as Ant-Man when it comes to humour. So yeah, the humour was spot on, and it's a well-directed movie. But it's just, you know, a lot of the action scenes, especially the big action set pieces, just sort of fell flat. And they just lacked any weight or impact or tension. They just happened. But overall, it was a fun, light, colourful movie. So yeah, I did have a lot of fun with this movie. I felt like they captured the character perfectly and it was well directed. I do think the climax was a little bit messy and I think could have been handled a little bit better. And I think that third act, that climax and the confrontation between Spider-Man and the Vulture, again, just sort of fell flat. And I think there needed to be more of a connection between Spider-Man and the Vulture. I don't think there was much of a connection between those two characters. So when you had that final climax, it wasn't quite as sort of as intense and emotional so as it could have been. And there's a twist in the movie as well that I think maybe could have been done a little bit earlier. Maybe that might have helped that. I don't know, but maybe it's just me being picky. But overall, yeah, I enjoyed the film. It was a good Spider-Man movie. Is it as good as Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2? Not quite. I do think this Spider-Man Homecoming has actually been a little bit overrated. It's got quite a good score on Rotten Tomatoes. It's a good, solidly, you know, well-directed movie. I do think it's a little tiny bit overrated though. And I do feel like they played it a little bit too safe in the film. I mean, this is a Marvel film, and you know that straight away. This fits in perfectly within that universe that they created, and it does. It looks and feels like a Marvel movie. And as a result, yeah, they did play it very safe, as they have been doing with the previous movies. So again, that's another one of my little gripes. But yeah, overall, I enjoyed Spider-Man Homecoming, and I will be giving it a B+. So yeah, that's my review of Homecoming. I do apologise. This has been I think it's 3 weeks since my last video or last review. I really do apologise. There've been a few reasons why. Again, work being one of them, and I've been jetting around the country to see a few gigs. Go to a few gigs as well. I've just come back from seeing Radiohead, in fact. So this week. I gotta sort of play catch up. I got a lot of reviews planned. The new Planet of the Apes, War for the Planet of the Apes. I'm so excited for that. I will have a review up for that hopefully by the end of the week. I've got a Transformers review on the way. I want to squeeze Baby Driver in, and so yeah. I've also got a Baywatch review to film as well for you guys. I've seen Baywatch about 2 weeks ago, so it's going to be a very late review. But yeah, enough of me rambling on. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And if you like what you see and you share the same passion, then why not hit subscribe?